Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Matt Martin. I'm Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm taking the meeting today in place of Kathy, who's away. Some housekeeping briefly, if I may. There's no planned fire drill for today, so if there is an alarm, if you could follow the the staff through the door there to the fire outside. Toilets are in the foyer, and there is not water on the table today, but if you need some, I'm sure that could be provided. The meeting today is a hybrid meeting. That means that the committee members are present in Bridgewater House, and the meeting is also online via Teams. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. We are on. Yes, okay, thank you. Can I remind all those in the room to turn your mobiles off or on silent, and can those joining us online please turn off your cameras and microphones so that the meeting is not disturbed. I will now introduce those taking part in the committee today. To my left are the officers from our legal and democratic services teams, and to my right are the planning officers who will present the applications. We have something with the microphone on. No, it isn't. And
you were right.
Don't forget. On the wings of the table are the councillors who will debate and decide the applications. The format will be as per the published agenda, and a copy of the officer reports can be found on the council website. Each application will be taken in turn. Officers will outline each application, followed by public speaking time. Only members of the public who are registered to speak can make representation for a 3-minute period. Councillors around the table will then debate and decide on each application in turn. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will vote on the proposal, and only members who have been present throughout the application will be able to vote. The voting options are for, against, abstain, or defer, and votes will be counted and the result announced within the meeting. Thank you. Can I first take apologies for absence, please, starting with Kathy Pearce. She won't be with us today.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we've got apologies from Councillor Kathy Pearce, Councillor Brian Bolt, and Councillor Jill Slocum.
Thank you very much. And have we all had a chance to read through the minutes of the previous meeting? And are you all happy that I sign as agreed of a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Filmer, and the seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Ham. I will hand over in just a moment. Can I ask the members present if there are any declarations of interest on the forthcoming debate? Sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on the Ashbury Training Board, but I think that's connected to this case to the I just got to mention it, and I haven't spoken to anybody of anything.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Nothing on this side. We have Councillor Bruce.
Sorry, Chair. Member of the Parrot Drainage Board. I think both of the items are related to the Parrot Drainage Board, but I haven't taken part in any discussions with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's all there is. Thank you very much for that. Moving on, public question time. We have no registered public question time. That's not with regard to the applications. As the applications come through, I shall call you up as per the application. So that's fine. Which allows us to go straight through to item 5, which is the main part of the meeting if we have no further objections, starting with application 82586, land to the north of Haygrove Farm in Bridgewater. Who's taking this one, please?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a full application for the erection of a self-built dwelling on land to the north of Haygrove Farm, Delhi Road. Now, the main considerations of this application relate to the principle of development, the access and highway impact, the character of the area, together with impact on the adjacent heritage asset and residential amenity. Now, the site is located off Haygrove Road, Durley Road, which you can see running north-east at the top of the map, and it runs approximately 170 metres down towards the site that you can see outlined in red. And the site itself is approximately 7.6 metres by 28 metres in size. In terms of the location, you can see it is located within a predominantly residential area. You've got a mixed variety of architectural styles and characters of buildings. Beyond the site to the south is the listed building, Haygrove Farm, and to the north, which is located here, to the northwest is another listed building here. You've got the detached properties as you lead down to the site, and then beyond to the west and beyond to the east, as you can see, the housing development. This aerial puts it into context. See it located in the area with the red marking. So the proposal is to erect a two-bed detached property. To the rear would be the garden area, and to the front would be space to park 2 cars off the highway. And this is a more detailed block layout of the proposal. Upstairs would be the bedrooms, downstairs the living area, to the rear the garden, and at the front the 2 car parking spaces, together with some space in front of those spaces to turn and manoeuvre to drive back up the lane. The proposal is as follows. It would be finished in natural stone with clay brick tiles and quite simple fenestration details. The proposal, yes, if we run through the photographs, it gives you a better idea of its location. This is Durley Road, so this is the junction into the lane directly off Durley Road, looking west. This is actually looking at the visibility that can be seen from exiting that lane. The first photograph looking east down Durley Road, and the other photograph looking west. And here I'm travelling down the road. As you can see, a number of existing residential properties either side of the lane. There are approximately 11, I counted 11 properties leading down to the site, including the listed building at the bottom. The photograph at the right, on the right-hand side, shows the listed building, Haygrove Farm, beyond the gates. You can see where the vehicle is parked. It is standing looking towards the site. You can actually see part of the wall to the listed building here. And then you can see the natural stone, very high natural stone wall, which forms the boundary between the listed building property and this site. And the actual site itself is, these photos were taken a week ago, so it's very green at the moment, although the site had been cleared. And if you look at the right-hand photograph, that is also at this present time. But these are the photographs submitted with the application by the applicant as they had cleared the site. So what can be seen now is just overgrown. There are no distinct well-established trees on the site, have been cleared. And these are the photographs of the site shortly after it was cleared. That photograph there showing the natural stone boundary wall to the listed building. And this is a left-hand photograph standing at the far end of the site, looking back towards the listed building beyond the boundary, and then the entrance into this site. And the right-hand photograph showing the current bank and boundary of the northeastern side of the site. Now, in terms of the principle of the development, the site is located within the settlement boundary, and this is a self-built dwelling, and therefore the principle of residential development within the settlement in amongst an area that's predominantly residential in character is considered to be acceptable. In terms of the impact on the character of the area and the impact on the adjacent heritage asset being the listed building, the site is not within a prominent location, but set at the end of a relatively long private drive, with the boundaries of the site already formed by the existing natural stone walls and the bank. The dwellings within the area do not have a distinct architectural form, and there's a diverse range of house types and architectural styles from the two listed buildings adjacent to the site, the detached properties leading down the lane, and the more recently constructed, densely populated residential development. The proposed house would be finished in natural stone with clay tiles. Now, during processing of the application, the materials and the fenestration have been altered. The conservation officer raised no objection to the principle of the proposal, but considered that because of the site being located close to the listed building, and while the wall was formerly part of an agricultural building previously, and that wall still remains, and there's no proposal to alter the wall. But considering the proximity of the site to the listed building, the conservation officer considered that the style of the building would be better reflecting more agricultural character if the fenestration had been simplified slightly. So the applicant has altered the drawings accordingly. So what you see today are the amended drawings, and they are in accordance with what the conservation officer's wishes were. And considering the location stepped well back within the site, it's a detached property in line with the other detached properties along the lane. It's not considered that this property would have any adverse impact on the character of the area, nor on the heritage assets being the listed buildings adjacent. In terms of highway safety, the lane leading to the site is a private lane. The application site area has sufficient space to provide adequate parking for two vehicles, to provide turning, so that vehicles can exit the lane in forward gear. As you can see at the exit or entrance onto Durley Road, it's relatively wide and therefore allows vehicles to pass. The proposal does provide, as I said, adequate parking and turning. Currently, the refuge vehicles, together with emergency vehicles and servicing and deliveries, would access the lane, would access all the other properties down the lane, and the proposal does not seek to alter that. It's not considered the additional one property that would be developed under this application would exacerbate it would not intensify the use of the access to such a degree that it would be detrimental to highway safety. In terms of residential amenity, the dwelling is located centrally within the site. It's of a sufficient distance from the neighbouring properties surrounding the site. There would be windows in the front and the rear, together with roof lights. Because of the distances, they would not overlook the surrounding properties. The roof lights would be set within the roof at 2 metres above the upper floor level, so as not to cause any overlooking. In terms of visual domination, due to its height and its proximity within the site, there would be no loss of light or visual domination. There would be adequate space within the property to provide adequate living space in line with national space standards, and the garden area would be sufficient for the size of the dwelling. Therefore, it's not considered there to be any adverse impact on residential amenity. In terms of ecology, this application is exempt from B&G due to it being a self-build. There would be enhancements, and that would be included as a condition attached to the consent. In terms of the B&G exemption, if consent is granted, it should be subject to the prior completion of a legal agreement to ensure that the property is occupied as self-build so as to maintain an exemption for B&G. In light of the above, the recommendation is to grant consent subject to a legal agreement and subject to the conditions attached to the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. With this, we have 4 speakers registered, or rather 3 speakers and 1 reading on behalf of. Could I ask Heather Smith to join us at the front, please? Now, I understand you have a statement from Saul Foster as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think if you'd like to read that one first and then come back, you'll have 3 minutes for each of the items. So if you, is your light thing on? Press talk, yes, please. And whenever you're ready, thank you.
Chair and members, I object because this proposal is an overdevelopment of a very constrained former barn plot in a sensitive heritage setting. The applicant's own heritage statement accepts that this site was formerly a barn used for hay storage in conjunction with Haygrove Farm, and Somerset's own conservation officer says the site lies within the setting of the listed farmhouse and contributes to its significance because of its historic relationship with the farmstead. The conservation officer also says the current design causes less than substantial harm through its impact on that setting. This is therefore not harmless infill on spare land. I'm also particularly concerned about how close the proposed dwelling would be to the retained historic boundary wall between the site and Haygrove Farm. The applicant's own statement says that the wall is a significant surviving feature and that careful excavation will be needed to avoid damage. That shows the risk clearly. Repair after damage is not the same as preserving an important historic feature unharmed in its setting. The adjoining woodlands objection also highlights how physically constrained this site is, including concern about the very narrow separation to boundaries and potential effects on nearby trees and neighbouring land during construction. This proposal is also linked to a lane that is already at breaking point. There is still no clear, secure solution for upgrading the lower section, for turning or for servicing, if those matters depend on land or rights outside the application site. The plans may show 2 parking spaces within the plot, but they say nothing meaningful about visitor parking, deliveries, stopping, or overspill outside the property line. On a normal road, that might be manageable, but on this lane, any overspill makes an already constrained situation worse. For all those reasons, I respectfully ask the committee to review the permission.
Thank you very much. And then you are to speak. Well, thank you again whenever you're ready.
My concern is mainly the practical functioning of the road along with heritage issues. You enter the lane from the highway on a bend in between 2 straight sections of Durley Road, where highways regularly install flashing speed indicators, attempting to reduce speeding. The pavement here is used by many children on foot, bikes, scooters, en route to Haybridge School, and local residents walking to town and St Matthew's Field and the Meads. Attempting to cross the road to reverse down the lane requires great care. The lane has pinch points of less than 3 metres width. It's privately owned, unadopted, single track, partly unmetalled, no pavements, passing areas, lighting, turning area at the farther end. I counted already serves 28 resident cars before guests, deliveries and service traffic are added, with several properties currently very under-occupied in terms of the number of bedrooms and occupants, so this number will increase. This daily use already causes congestion, passing difficulties, turning problems, with driveways being used as unofficial off, turning areas for cars, delivery vans and lorries, because there is nowhere else. So this means many are now gated, and the consensus of the remaining residents is now to follow suit to prevent damage to our properties. This will restrict the use of the lane by vehicles further, presenting difficulties for pedestrians. The lack of a turning area at the end of the lane means that the gated drives vehicles will have to reverse up or down the lane, which is inherently dangerous to all. Summerfield Estates, the lane owner has objected and states there are no passing places. Part of the lane is only a stone surface. There's no turning head for construction traffic, and no permission has been granted by them for easements of services, especially drainage. The point is that the committee should not assume that congestion, access, turning and servicing issues can somehow be sorted out later if they depend on land or rights outside of the application site itself. This proposal would intensify the overdevelopment of the constrained lane, which is already at breaking point without a clear, secured and suitable access solution. The proposed site undoubtedly would affect the two neighbouring Grade 2 listed properties, it being of an out of character, overbearing nature, immediately outside the entrance to Haven Farm and its walls, and looking down over woodlands. It will neither enhance nor preserve the setting of either, and have a detrimental effect on both. For those reasons, we ask the committee to refuse permission.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I call Helen Surgison, please? Same again, Ms. Surgison, if you make sure your microphone's on, and 3 minutes on the clock. Thank you.
I speak as a directly affected resident to explain why the access is already unsafe, already failing, and cannot support any further development. The access serving the site is a single width private lane with no formal passing places. It is constrained in width, visibility, and manoeuvrability. As a result, vehicles cannot pass without using private land, including my driveway, in order to move or turn. That is not how a safe and functional access should operate. This lane is already failing, and it is clear, and there's clear evidence to support this. My property has sustained 2 separate instances of damage directly arising from vehicles using this lane. In one case, a delivery driver moved and damaged our planter to allow himself to turn on our drive. In another, a refuse collection vehicle reversed into my boundary wall, which remained awaiting repair. These incidents are not anecdotal. They demonstrate that the access cannot operate safely and in real condition, even at its current level of use. There are also clear pedestrian safety concerns. The lane is used daily by residents, including families and young children. I have personally experienced a near miss where a vehicle used my drive to turn and came in close proximity to my son whilst he was in his pram. Given the narrowness of the lane and the lack of visibility and the need for frequent reversing and turning movements, conflict between vehicles and pedestrians is not occasional, it's unavoidable. This is not a new concern. In the officer report of the planning application 0818002221 along the same lane, ward members stated that the laneway is already over-congested, bringing another development would cause a lot of congestion problems. That concern was valid then. Since that time, vehicle numbers and servicing activity has increased, and the situation has only worsened. If the access was considered over-congested at that point, it's difficult to see how further intensification could now be acceptable. From a planning perspective, development should only proceed where it can do so safely without unacceptable harm. This proposal fails to meet that test. There is a clear case of cumulative intensification beyond what this access can safely accommodate. In conclusion, this proposal would further intensify the use of access that cannot safely accommodate the vehicles, relies heavily on private land to function, has already caused damage, and poses a clear risk and ongoing risk to pedestrians. It would also harm the setting of a listed building. The evidence is already there. The impact is not potential, it is happening now, and for those reasons, I ask the committee to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And can I finally call Andrew Welling, please? Thank you, Mr. Welling. Just make sure the microphone's on, and 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I object to this application on the basis of the suitability of the lane to support an increase in traffic. I don't know if you're aware, but the lane narrows to 3 metres in places, and there are no dedicated passing places or pedestrian walkways. Consequently, private driveways are utilised as passing places and reversing bays when attempting to leave the lane. This results in risk and damage to private property, and I myself have had a vehicle damaged for this very reason. Pedestrians are also forced to take evasive action when confronted by speeding delivery drivers. There are approximately 25 vehicles associated with properties in the lane. An additional 2 may not seem much, but the associated increase in vehicles using the lane. These service vehicles are of concern because of the speed for which they're driven, resulting in potential risk for accidents and injuries using private drives as passing places and turning points. Increased traffic also results in accelerated wear and tear on the lane surface. I don't think proper consideration to these concerns have been addressed, and for that reason, I'd like to request that the application is dismissed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Welling. Okay, we have no other speakers. So without further ado, I'd like to open it up to the floor. Oh, I do apologise. Will you be reading that?
Yes, I'll be reading.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, well, we've got a statement from Councillor Jill Slocum to read out before we move on to the councillors' discussions. As she said, that this application potentially impacts on the setting of the adjacent Grade 2 listed building, Haygrove Farm, and does not fall within its curtilage. This development will impact the character of the area, and the heritage asset will impact on the history and heritage of adjacent listed buildings. The lane is privately owned, and entrance to the lane of Durley Road is not sufficient in width, which does not give vehicles space to wait for vehicles to pass. The increased use of this lane for one additional dwelling will intensify the use of the existing access onto the very busy Durley Road to such a degree that to be detrimental to highway safety. There are no walkways with inadequate turning and parking with increased degradation of the lane. There is also no street lighting. There will be loss of privacy from Haygrove Farm due to noise and disturbance with light pollution. There's potential loss of further trees adjacent to the site. This is an important factor. There's inadequate foul and surface water drainage, with no details on how this could be dealt with and what impact it would have on nearby properties. No net gain to wildlife diversity and diversity protected species. Surveys are required which have not been given enough time for comments or consultation. This is an important issue and one where no one has carried out a full report on this matter. I read in this report that due to the former use on the site, there shall be a watch and brief for potential contamination, including asbestos containing materials and assesses for visual and evidence of contamination during any groundworks, and if any unforeseen contamination is found during excavation, and the local plan authority shall be notified immediately. Surely this is something that you want to investigate first before agreeing to any potential development. Even the refuse and recycling lorries cannot get down the lane. If an emergency vehicle was needed, it will be almost impossible. I do hope the drone pictures will be able to establish this for you. It was agreed when the last application went in that no more applications would be considered in this area. It was agreed that this would be overdevelopment. I would urge the committee to please refuse this application on the above grounds. Thank you for your time. Councillor Jill Slocum.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, can I start with Councillor Smedley, please?
I just want to start by saying, although I'm a member of Bridgewater Town Council, I didn't declare an interest because they've made a particularly non-effective response to this, saying they're awaiting Highways response. Highways response is also non-committal, but we've heard evidence from residents and ward councillors that it clearly is a very difficult area regarding highways, causing considerable problems, clear case over developments and heritage issues in that area. So I would suggest that we do reject it out of hand straight away.
Thank you, Councillor Smedley. Is that a proposal, by the way, that we reject?
Yes.
It is. Okay, Councillor Smedley proposes we reject the application. Is there anybody else? Start with Councillor Filmer, please.
Yeah, I might potentially the planning officer. I just wanted to get clarification in terms of the access lane. I think we were advised is a private road. It's not public highway. And there was some of the speakers queried whether or not permission had been given for that to be done. Could we just have clarity as to whether that is a that's going to end up being a private matter that needs to be sorted. So were permission to be granted, if they've got no right of access, they wouldn't be able to develop it because they got no right of access. Equally, I think there was a point that was raised about drainage, and whether there were proper leaves to get the drainage away. Again, I would imagine that is a private matter with the landowner to sort out whether they've got those rights. So I'm not sure that's something we can make a decision on. It was queried, I think, by the board member about whether there were adequate plans showing what the dealing was with foul sewage and as such. So whether we could just have that clarified. I noticed again the issue was raised about the listed building and the impact. Could we just have clarification again on what the conservation officer's position is? I think we were told that the conservation officer had asked for changes in plans which have now been done. So is the conservation officer now saying that impact is mitigated? And again on the highways, final question or comment. It's been raised about the fact this is going to make a difficult situation potentially worse. Any applicant can't obviously be expected to sort out previous problems. The fact that there are, I think we were told 11 properties down there, this is an additional one, so 10% of that, would that qualify in terms of being a significant enough increase that would give us the planning ground to actually make an objection to this, or would that be seen as not significant enough change that would leave us in that position? Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Filmer. You have 4 points there. Would you like to take those now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, councillor Filmer. You have highlighted all of the relevant facts from the report. In terms of the road, it is a private road. I understand it's owned by a number of the properties, shared ownership, from what I can understand. I do not know what rights the applicant has in terms of building development on that site, and that is a private matter that would be dealt with outside of this planning control. In terms of the drainage, I understand that in terms of surface water, that would be dealt with by a Soakaway, but it will be subject to percolation tests and building regulations. The foul drainage is intended to connect into the foul sewer. In terms of the heritage aspect, the wall itself did form part of an agricultural building that related to Haygrove Farm, which was formerly a farm many years ago. The wall itself is not listed in the listing details of Haygrove Farm. There is no intention to alter this wall. The conservation officer's comments at the time, they had no objection in principle, but they wanted some improvements to the fenestration details of the proposed building in order to make it a little bit more agriculture in character. While the site is actually not within an agricultural setting anymore, surrounded by residential properties. However, the applicants have amended the plans accordingly to the exact requirements of the conservation officer, and therefore it's not considered that the development would have any adverse impact on the heritage asset. In terms of the returning back to the highway matter, there is adequate space off of Durley Road in order to pass at the top of the road. No, there isn't adequate space to pass vehicle as you lead down the road. At the bottom, the proposal does incorporate enough space for the applicant's vehicles to turn and for anybody else who got to the bottom to turn. It is considered that just one more dwelling here is not going to exacerbate the situation to such a degree that we would be able to warrant a refusal. And in light of the lack of refusal recommendation from the Highway Authority, with this being a private road, that's why there's no recommendation for refusal for this application. It's considered that it would not lead to highway danger, and that those matters would be dealt with outside of the planning control. Thank you.
you very much. Councillor Phil, does that cover everything there? Thank you. Okay, in which case can I go over to Councillor Ferguson, please?
Thank you, Chair. Only to slightly rehash Councillor Filmer's point on the highways issue, by way of what might be a dumb question. The word privately owned road or lane has been used a number of times. Does that change the way in which the Highways Department gives advice, how much advice they're comfortable in giving? And should we refuse and it be appealed? Does that change the way that the appeal system looks at the way we refused it? If only to say that by the division members' statement and the questions, it does look like this lane is at a tipping point. So I'm just wondering what the nature of it being a privately owned lane does to the advice that Highways gives us.
The Highway Authority are concerned about impact on the highway. So as it's a private lane, it's not a highway. And so their primary concern is how vehicles come out onto Durley Road. And vehicles can come out in a forward gear onto Durley Road. Vehicles can come off south of Durley Road. And so vehicles can pass at the top because it's very wide. And therefore, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the Highway Authority, but that would be my understanding of why they would not object.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any more thoughts, anybody? Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I right in thinking that if we passed this and they couldn't get the necessary permission to use a private road, they couldn't build it anyway? I thought that would be the case. So at the end of the day, if this was passed and they haven't got permission to use that, they can't build it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was my understanding as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? We have at the moment a proposal from Councillor Smedley to refuse this application. Do I have anybody seconding that thought? We do have a seconder from Councillor Bruce. Oh, would you like to speak first? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of support Councillor Smedley's points, but also I think in terms of the residential amenity, I don't know whether we have grounds on that basis, because the damage that it's doing by putting another property there and the extra movements, even though it's a private road, it is causing damage to the amenity of the existing residents, is it not? But anyway, I do wish to second Councillor Smedley's points.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. So we have a proposal from Councillor Smedley, which has been seconded by Councillor Bruce. If we have no further thoughts on that, I'd like to take a vote, please. All of those. One moment, please.
Sorry, I'm just pausing the committee to make sure that we've got material grounds in terms of the turn of recommendation. So what we need to look at is what the policy conflict is, what the weight of the policy conflict is. So the advice for this one, it's a single dwelling. It was assessed against standing advice. So the standing advice in terms of what degree of access, board visibility, width, that type of thing needs to be looked at, needs to be assessed as part of the application. The view is obviously it's one additional dwelling, which will increase additional movements to an already quite constrained access. But the question is, what is the actual conflict of the access and what is the actual harm of the conflict of the access to sustain a recommendation for refusal? Because if it ends up being refused and then ends up needing to be defended at appeal, officers need to be clear in terms of what we are looking to present in terms of the case. So I would just like members to debate it a bit more, please, in terms of where the conflict is relative to highway standing advice and the adopted policy for the area.
Okay, with that uppermost down, minds down, I'll go back to Councillor Ferguson, please.
For me, and from what other councillors have said, the conflict is the level of traffic on the road. What I'm not understanding is how to frame that. There's a distinction between the advice we've got from highways and the distinction between a public road and a private road. So in the documentation, I think it's 11.28 from what I can glance here. There is some summary advice given on the access and the road itself. I don't understand where highways has given advice on the access, so I'm assuming is it behaving as a statutory consultant. and then it giving some advice on the private lane, which therefore would or wouldn't be statutory advice. Can we challenge it that way? I need a breakdown of what we can and can't speak to via the public and the private element. And when highways, when it gives advice on those two, is behaving with a statutory and potentially a non-statutory consult. Is my understanding how to frame it. If that's nonsense, do tell me. Well, I don't know how to argue against it because I don't know what it points at. It's my point.
Thank you. I think the thing I'd be advising members to have a look at would be the highway standing advice. So for a single dwelling, the highway authority would not normally comment on a single dwelling unless there's something in particular that's causing them particular problems. But a single dwelling is of small enough scale that they don't consider it to be significant, adopted or private highway, in terms of providing bespoke comment. So then looking at it next to standing advice, which is what the case officer has to do when looking at the application. So it does an access for a single residential unit. So this is para 4.1.3 in the standing advice document. So it might not be replicated in the report, for which I apologise. But standing advice says that any access for a single residential unit shall have a minimum width of 3 metres. Where an access serves more than one unit, adequate width to pass 2 vehicles shall be secured. It is recommended that a minimum width of 5 metres be provided over a minimum length of 6 metres. What you also have to consider is forward visibility and where passing places are. So if there's sufficient visibility, if you were coming down in a car, to see far enough forward that you can see another vehicle coming, you pause, the vehicle passes, you can carry on through, that's fine. What you've got is if you've got an access that's only 3 metres in width for the entire length, obviously for a length from Durley Road to this site, I would say from a highway safety perspective, that might be unsafe. But I think within the report, it was that there were passing places or there was spaces for vehicles pass.
No. There's no place
At the top of the site.
on the main road.
Okay. If members were wanting to refuse on highway standing advice, what I would recommend at the moment, I'm sorry because I hate doing this, but I would say defer the application because I don't think you have the information available for you to look at the road widths relative to highway standing advice, which is what you need to do if you are refusing it on standing advice as a committee. Sorry.
Just tick up bands from my understanding. So that advice highways has given that you've iterated to me, that does include the private lane. Again, dumb question, but that does include the whole route from the road, down the turning, all the way down to the proposed site. It's
So-
the highways is making a claim on that piece of road.
No,
Having a view on that.
The
piece of road.
highways have said it's for the local planning authority
Yeah.
to assess the proposal against standing advice.
Okay,
And the paragraph that I read out is a bit within the document of the standing advice, but the document for standing advice is, I don't know how many pages long. So it'll have different regulations in terms of what the visibility display requirements are, what the width of the highway is supposed to be, how many passing places you need to have, that type of thing. So if members are concerned from a highway safety perspective, the reason for refusal would be that the development would be contrary to standing advice. But based on the information before you, I have concerns that you don't have enough information to button that down on the information that you've got at the moment. So I would suggest to defer the application for us to come back with the specific width measurements of the highway and the visibility displays so that you can make that assessment against the guidance.
two super quick things and I'll shut up forever, I promise. Can I generally propose then that we do defer and go seek that information? But just a little summary question. When we look at the road itself, there's been a lot of mention from residents about the fact that the beginnings of people's private driveways are used for people to negotiate down that lane. Is that usually, I'm not expecting you to be able to answer necessarily, is that usually included in how people can negotiate small country lanes, or is it not? Because I'm just seeing that as becoming a later point of contention. But if someone looks at the road and they goes, well, there's all these driveways and laybys that people can use, but actually they're privately owned, we're just replacing the problem by deferring it now, because we're still not quite sat on the distinction of how highways talks about private use, private lanes.
Yeah.
But we're asking the same thing again.
If
2 months
it's
down
a
the line.
private lane, full stop, all of it's private. So who owns which bit is superfluous because the whole lane is private. So there's no bit that's public highway. If it was a public classified road,
Okay.
you'd have adopted classified highway and then you'd have private ownership of different driveways, which could then be trespassed onto other people's lanes. The issue is with a private lane, it is all private. So there's no public highway. So I can't tell you that access is all public highway apart from this bit where someone's private drive starts. The whole lane is private lane. So that distinction is, when people could still put up bollards, people could still defend their own spaces, which could cause more problem for existing residents down that lane. But as a private lane, there's no clear distinction in terms of public-private, as you set out.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Just before I carry on, please, or we carry on, please, can I ask the gallery not to speak while the discussion is taking place? Thank you. To clear up my confusion from Councillor Ferguson, that's what I understand as well. We have a private lane whereby the standing orders from highways wouldn't necessarily stand because it is private. And the only passing places that we have, aside from at the very top, at the very hammerhead of the lane, the only passing places are private driveways. And if all the other private driveways chose to put boulders on their driveways, there wouldn't be any parking spaces, which is what I take from it so far. Is that correct? Yes.
As far as I know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. To Councillor Hand, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just possibly a slightly irrelevant question, but if the applicant got permission, how much leverage would that give them against access down a private lane? You know, how much leverage would they have against all the other residents and the owners of the lane?
Insofar as the planning application, I'd say none, because it's a separate civil issue. If members were to grant planning permission, that doesn't grant the right of trespass. So even if we had members were minded to grant planning permission, they obviously need to sort out the right of access independently as a civil issue outside of the planning process. So if they'd sorted out a right of access, again, that doesn't afford any weight in the consideration of the planning application, because if you have a right to drive up and down a road, it doesn't matter. That doesn't give you planning permission for a house. You still consider the merits of the case.
Okay.
Councillor Henry, please.
Thank you, Chair. Only once in 7 years I've ever asked for a site visit, one time, because I'm not big on site visits. But on this particular occasion, there's so much information going back and forth, which I think people may be a little bit confused and whatever. Second thing in 7 years, I'd like to ask for a site visit. I think that's actually a good thing, because it's okay getting it deferred. That's one thing that on the site visits we can see for yourself. Absolutely, that's where we are.
Thank you. We have another proposal from Councillor Hendry to make a site visit. Do we have a seconder for that proposal? Make a site visit? Anybody?
I'm going to suggest we go look ourselves. We don't want to make it a big issue.
That's what you just said.
Right. Clarification, in fact, the road we used to use.
They can't hear you.
Sorry, Chairman. And when we used to go to Bridgewater Fair, was that the access used under the parking area when that was Bridgewater Fair now? Not that one. All I'm going to say is anybody who lives in a village got to get used to these things every day, the parking in our places and all the rest of it. I mean, it concerns me, it's a private bit of road. It's not too clear, but the man's obviously not a fool applying for planning. He must have something illegal documentation, otherwise you wouldn't spend all the money on having all this done. And what's going to happen to it if it ain't sorted out anyhow and tidied up and brought into use? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. But before I continue, are you seconding Councillor Hendry's proposal for a site visit? You will. Thank you very much. Bob, did you want to speak?
Only potentially a second that the site visit, but on the basis that gives us time to do the work that Mr. Reeves was suggesting will be done during the deferral anyway, to clarify what the widths are and the access lines.
Very good, thank you. So as it stands, we have two proposals on the table. The first one from councillor Smedley, seconded by councillor Bruce, to refuse the application. The process, as far as I understand it, and I'll be told if I'm wrong, is that we have to vote on the first proposal first. Should that one fail, then we'll go to the second proposal. So if, yes, please do.
So it is right, the first vote goes first, so effectively you would be voting to refuse or not the application. My just word of caution for members is if you are voting to refuse the application, we would then need to probe you in terms of exactly what policy, exactly what conflict, which is the information I don't think you have available for you at the moment, which is why I came in with the deferral, but members are free to make whatever vote they wish. But technically you do have to vote on the refusal first, and then second vote is on the site visit. After which we will come back to the committee meeting with the appropriate measurements and more detailed site photos of the access lane.
Thank you very much. I just want to make this absolutely clear then. We have the proposal from councillor Smedley, which we're going to vote on first, is the proposal for us to refuse the application. So if you put your hand up for this one, we will be voting to refuse and we won't go to the second vote. If you do not vote in favour of councillor Smedley's proposal, that will fall and then we'll go to the second vote. Are we all okay? Thank you. Right, with that in mind, if I could ask you to raise your hand, please, if you are in favour of councillor Smedley's proposal to refuse this application.
Two.
Two. Yes, two, yes, thank you. And if you are against councillor Smedley's proposal? 6, 7, 8. Thank you for that. And thank you, councillor Smedley, councillor Bruce. With that, we are free to go on to the second poll, in which case I would like to,
Chair,
yes, please do.
just check there were no abstentions.
Sorry, yes, there are no, that was all the hands, so are there no abstentions on that vote? Thank you. Then we are free to carry on to councillor Hendry's proposal, seconded by councillor Bradford, that we defer this and partake of a site visit to have a look at this lane for ourselves and see what we think about the parking places, the parking spaces, and the overall width, both at the top and the bottom. Are we all happy with that? In which case, if you're in favour of that proposal, can I ask you to raise a hand, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. That wraps up that application, and we are free to continue on to item number 6. Oh, just to confirm for the gallery, what just happened is we have voted as a committee to defer this application, and we're going to pop out and have a look at the lane as a committee and then bring it back once we have more information, another discussion. I'm afraid we can't take more questions at the moment. Right, so we will go on to item number 6, which is the application for road lane in Bridgewater. Who is taking this one, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Go. If you're listening online, there's a bit of a pause at the moment while we sort out the IT at this end. We'll be back to you in just a moment. Thank you. Yes, that's a good idea. Could I ask if anybody would like? I will stop talking. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this is planning application 0825000200 at 9 Road Lane, Bridgewater, Somerset, for the erection of a single-storey rear extension for an additional bedroom and a proposed change of use from C4 6-bedroom HMO to a 8-bedroom HMO. So these are the relevant local plan policies as set out in the delegated officer report. So these are the main planning considerations as with the principle of development, the design, visual amenity, residential amenity, highways, parking, flood risk, and also that we have a lack of 5-year housing land supply. So relevant planning history to this site is that we recently consented a certificate of lawfulness for the proposed erection of a single-storey rear extension, a dormer extension, and the change of use of a C3 dwelling house to a C4 house and multiple occupation for 6 people. So this is the site location plan. So it's on 9 Road Lane, which is accessed by the 838 in Bridgewater. This is the site location plan. This is the existing block plan. The proposed block plan, which shows the waste storage in the front garden, cycle storage in the rear garden with car parking space in the rear garden as well. Also the single-storey rear extension, which is proposed as part of this application. This is the existing ground floor plan, which shows the living room, the kitchen, dining area, and bedroom. So this is the existing first floor. And this is the proposed ground floor, which shows the additional bedroom extended. This is the proposed first floor plan. And also bedroom 6 is proposed to be the safe refuge in the event of a flood. And this is the proposed second floor plan. This is the existing west elevation. And this is the proposed west elevation, which shows the single-storey rear extension. This is the existing east elevation. It's the proposed east elevation. This is the existing front and rear elevation. This is the proposed front and rear elevation. So this is an image of the property that I took off Google Street View and didn't have the scaffolding up. And then this is a photograph of the site as it stands today. So they've got scaffolding because they're implementing the certificate of lawfulness. So they're putting in the roof lights and the rear dormers. So this is the access for the rear of the site. This is how the parking space to the rear is accessed via this access off of Road Lane. This is an existing access, and this is what leads to all the parking spaces serving the dwellings in this row houses. So this is the rear of the site. As you can see, construction works have already begun on the rear dormers, and the parking space is sited the rear of the property as well. So in terms of town council objection, this is what we received. So they objected due to overdevelopment, a lack of parking, access in and out of the site, and the proposal changing the character of the neighbourhood. So in response to this objection, so the site already has an extended use as a 6-bedroom house in multiple occupation. The proposed change of use extension would allow for a further 2 people, so go from 6 people to 8 people. The site already operates an under provision of 2 parking spaces, but this is mitigated against by the fact that it's sited within Bridgewater, a sustainable location, and within walking distance to local amenities. The access would be via an existing access onto road lane, which serves adjoining dwellings. The site already has permission for a 6-bedroom house multiple application, and this application just needs to go from 6 to 8. So this is unlikely to change the character of the neighbourhood as it's already in use as a house in multiple occupation. In terms of neighbour comments, these are the summary of the objections that we received. So there was concerns over a lack of waste and bin storage. So the proposal is to site the waste and bin storage at the front of the property, which is consistent with the surrounding dwellings. There was also concerns over inadequate parking, but whilst this proposal is already operating under provision of car parking, it is within a sustainable location. There was also concerns over noise nuisance. However, going from 6 to 8 residents is unlikely to increase noise nuisance to an extent that would unacceptably harm neighbours. And in any case, noise complaints would be dealt with by the police or environmental health. There were concerns over the loss of garden space. So while the proposal would result in a loss of garden space, there's still a small area of amenity space for storage and access for the future occupiers. There was also concerns about a loss of privacy. However, the proposal would include a single-storey rear extension, which would be unlikely to cause any overlooking or loss of privacy due to the 2-metre fencing along the boundary. There was some concerns over the rear access lane being narrow, but this would only be used for pedestrian access, as the vehicular access is off road lane rather than the lane to the rear. So, in summary, the principal development, the proposal falls within Bridgewater, but the principal residential development is considered acceptable. Whilst the proposal would involve some exterior alterations in the form of bin storage, a single-storey extension as cycle storage, these would be minimal. In terms of residential amenity, the proposal would offer a house in multiple occupation with adequately sized bedrooms with fully opening windows for outlook and ventilation. The proposal is unlikely to adversely harm neighbouring dwellings. The proposal was within a sustainable location, so unlikely to adversely harm highway safety. In terms of flood risk, the proposal is within flood zone 3A. However, the applicant has submitted a flood risk assessment, which sets out the details for emergency planning and evacuation in the event of a flood risk. In the event of a flood, and this would be set out in the conditions. And also the council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, and so the tilted balance would weigh in favour of residential development. So overall, the recommendation is to grant planning permission, subject to 4 conditions, which would be the statutory time expiry conditions, the approved plans, and then a restrictive condition advising no further subdivision than 8 people, and also the development should be in accordance with the approved flood risk assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We don't have any speakers registered for this one. So if I am able, I'll go straight to Councillor Filmer and then to Councillor Smedley. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a couple of things I just wanted to clarify. Paragraph 10(8), is that wrong? It says the proposed extension is not considered to be of an appropriate scale, design, and detailing. Are we saying that it isn't appropriate, but we're granting it? It might just be a typo. There's a not in there that shouldn't be, but 10.8.
I was going to say yes. Reading the paragraph, I think it should be, if we are leaving the not in, it's not considered to be inappropriate scale, design, etc. So yeah, apologies.
And the 2 paragraphs after that, again, it's parish. I think. Town for Bridgewater. The other thing I just wanted to clarify in my mind, having seen the pictures, is the application in front of us says it's just a ground floor, single story extension. The, not sure how to describe the box dormer on the back of the property at the moment, but is that, and that's an existing box dormer that is there, that's not being altered, that's not part of the inappropriate designs.
So they gained the dormer under the certificate of lawfulness. We've already granted that, so that's why they're building it, because it's already granted. But that does enable an extension, that enables an additional bedroom in the second floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Say something?
No.
No.
Okay, just gonna try for Dave.
Then can I go to councillor Smedley, please?
So again, as a member of Bridgewater Town Council, I probably need to declare that I haven't taken any part in their discussions about this, but clearly they've objected. As the ward councillor for the division, along with Kathy, I've also taken no pre-position on this. But I would say, and this particular area, the change of character in this area, due to considerable number of HMOs over the years, is noticeable. It's very close to Ashley Avenue, which is possibly the fly parking capital of the town at the moment, and the maximum number of HMOs in one small place, which is not designed for this. That's a clear example of overdevelopment in this area, lack of parking. It's the main entrance road to Road Low, it's the main entrance into Hamp Estate. The side of the road there is well overparked as it is. And I would say, if there isn't a case for objecting to this, I can't think of a better one to object to. So I would propose straight away with the object on those grounds, and you can tell me later that we can't do it.
Thank you, councillor Smedley. We have a proposal from councillor Smedley that we refuse this application. Yeah, yes.
I'm not saying you can't do it, but can you just set out what the objection actually was? Because there was a lot of talk about congested parking on a different road.
I think what the town council has written in there, I think is quite substantial. I was a plan officer, I could put that in a better word.
Copy my copy, please. Is that for overdevelopment?
Yeah.
Yeah, overdevelopment, okay.
You want to come back on that one before I carry on?
Yeah, so the town council comment was objection due to concern of overdevelopment, the lack of parking, access in and out, and changing the character of the neighbourhood. So is it all those points?
Okay.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll go to councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Every point brought up, councillor Smedley, everything, I agree with it totally. He's got it absolutely right. I agree with everything. Add to that, I'm not from Bridgewater, but I've obviously studied everything is here, so I know, and I've seen the presentation, so I do know what's going on here. But yes, I agree with that you say. There's only one parking space, as I see it. I think I'm correct in saying that's just one parking space. How ludicrous is that anyway? HMOs are becoming too many. They're just becoming too many, and I think Councillor Smedley pointed that out anyway himself. They're just becoming too many, and the line has to be going. And add to that, it's a front of very nice old terrace houses. So you cannot just keep doing this all the time. It just can't. It just doesn't fit in the character. It's not correct. One parking space. It just doesn't work. So yes, I agree with Councillor Smedley. I think he's just said. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hendry. And we have, we'll go to councillor Bruce, and then I believe,
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for clarification on the certificate of lawfulness? Because I have to say, when I saw the picture in that dormer window at the back, that looked most out of keeping with the rest of the terrace. And I really don't understand how that has been allowed under the certificate of lawfulness. Can you just explain it for me, please?
So under permitted development right, you can have dormers provided complies with Class B. It's on the general permitted development order. Apologies. So household permitted development rights. So you can build a dormer provided it meets the criteria of the legislation, which is 20 centimetres above the eaves. It doesn't specify that it has to be follow the roof shape. So the local planning authority will, if it complies with legislation, the local planning authority has no grounds to refuse it. So we would grant that.
Chair, may I come back? I would at this point like to second Councillor Smedley's proposal. I think we have, I've said it before on the last planning meeting, I think my statement was read out on the previous application, and we just have this cumulative impact. And we need some sort of mechanism to address this, because every time, and I appreciate we have to as a committee look at each application on its own merits, but we can't have these coming forward every time. And we feel like we're powerless to do anything about it. We have to make a stand and say, no, this is not okay. There's just too many. And people, even though it is in a sustainable location, people are not going to walk and park. They are going to have their cars. There's going to be 8 people there with 8 cars that need to park in an already very difficult area. So I feel I have to second that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Before we go across to Councillor Bradford, I'm interested in the previous question. I'm not disputing the facts laid before us, but it's household development rights, even though it's an HMO and not a household.
So when they applied for a certificate of lawfulness, they applied as a householder because that was the lawful use at the time. So we granted or considered the single story rear extension and the rear dormer met the requirements for legislation. And so it was lawful development. They didn't actually need to apply to us to do that. We just confirmed that it met the requirements of the legislation, which allowed them to then apply for this planning application. I just wanted to highlight as well that the site already has permission to be a 6-bedroom HMO. So it already has permission to be a house in multiple occupation. It's already operating with just 1 parking space. So this is just the impact of a further 2 people and a further 2 bedrooms.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go to Alan first and then to Councillor Filmer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Big Chairman host, we had quite a discussion with Petherton Town Council last night about a circular come through about future developments and what have you, and what of the council feel about HPC workers in particular looking for more accommodation as the campus was turned down, etc. There's obviously more pressure on other places to do things like this. And I think one of the questions that Councillor Bruce asked, I do think you can clear that one totally. I've got to agree with Councillor Smedley, but sometimes you just can't get a quarter into a pint cup. And that seems to be happening. It's unfortunate these things are happening, but and we've got to have a bit of a feeling for the people that's living there already, and sometimes it does get a bit claustrophobic, I think, but it's an unfortunate set of circumstances we're faced with, because HBC are still looking for areas for people to house and what have you, and it is a very difficult compromise. And as a planning committee, we want to see HBC finish and got on with it. But perhaps sometimes you just got to take a look at the things that's holding a bit of disruption and hassle everywhere else. Sorry it took so long, but that's how I feel. Sorry.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Go to Councillor Filmer and then to Councillor.
Yeah, I was only going to say, I hear the comments of the other members and have every understanding of where we're coming from. It's Councillor Bruce that mentioned only a meeting or so ago, we had an almost identical application to this, which we granted, but on the basis that it was an upgrade of only a limited amount, that highways had an objective on parking, that we didn't have other reasons that we could hang it on, and we didn't have a policy in the council to say there is a cumulative effect and therefore we should take that into account. I'm not aware that anything has changed in the meantime. Now, it may well be that we end up with a different decision, but if we do, we need to at least arm our colleagues as officers with some things that they can work with to defend a decision. We can turn this down and have a warm fuzzy feeling that we've stood up for the community and everyone goes away feeling happy until the appeal comes in. And then that doesn't help anybody. So all I'm going to say is if we do go down the route of refusing this, we need to have some very solid reasons that officers can defend, because obviously seeing the way this site has developed, whoever the applicant is, they know what they're doing in terms of planning. Certainly the remark we heard about the former and the way that was applied for, and that's domestic and now it's multiple occupation. So I just think we need to be careful that we don't give people false hopes that we've managed to do something that might not happen, but ultimately that's a decision for them.
Wise words as always. Thank you. That's it. Councillor Henry, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's awfully well to say for a police officer that it's only 2 more people. We've had all this before. In actual fact, that's 25% uplift. And the 25% goes across the board. You get 25% people, 25% more noise, 25% more people coming and going. It's okay saying a jump from 6 to 8, but it's actually a bit more than that if you take it on a percentage basis. I don't know, has it been seconded by Kathy? Did you second that? That's okay, because I really done it, but you've done it already. I still stand by everything said from that corner over there. It's absolutely right, and I back them wholeheartedly. I don't think it's a good idea. They've got too many channels. And as I said before, the front facade is an old Victorian building, I think. And it just takes away the whole character of the whole street. You might think it's just one, but it's not really. It's all the people coming and going. So no, I can't go for this at all.
Thank you very much indeed. So we have no further comments at the moment. We do have a proposal on the table from Councillor Smedley that we refuse this application, seconded by Councillor Bruce, on the basis of overdevelopment. And we can thrash the details of that out, I believe. Would you like to say something?
I'm just trying to help thrash details out, as it were. Right, so based on the concerns that were raised by the town council, the concerns regarding overdevelopment and the change in the character of the neighbourhood. So in terms of overdevelopment, I think members would need to have a look at policy D2, because the view that policy is promoting high quality and inclusive design. So it'd be whether members are satisfied that the development proposal complies with that policy or not. In terms of changing the character of the neighbourhood, there are no physical changes to the front of the building as a result of this proposal. So there are changes to the back of the building, but in terms of the front of the building, the size, scale, character of the dwelling or building as it is now, there aren't any physical changes. So I would be probably guiding members not to necessarily object on changed character or appearance of the dwelling, because there aren't any changes to the external appearance of the dwelling as a result of the proposal. If you're looking at highways, you're looking at policy D14 in terms of the development proposing appropriate parking provision for the proposed use. But to reiterate the point that Rob Filmer made, the authorised use of the site is a 6-bed HMO. So effectively, as members, given the tilted balance is in force, you'd be saying the provision of 2 additional people, potentially 2 additional car parking spaces within the area is so severe that it justifies refusing planning permission above the other point. So I would probably encourage members to look at policy D2 and D14, and I would probably try and steer members away from character, given there aren't any external changes to the building in terms of the main street scene and prevalent character of the street scene as we view it. But that was just trying to help. But effectively, it is the net increase from 6 to 8 that members are restricted to. It's not a wholesale new HMO for 8 beds. It's the increase from 6 to 8.
Thank you very much indeed. Policy D2 is on page 117 if any of you are looking it up. I agree, absolutely. If I may just comment myself that it is only 2 going up, but there has to be, as Councillor Henry so eloquently pointed out, that maybe there needs to be a line. There could be another 2 on top of that, which is only another 25% on top, and then another 2 on top of that, which is only another 33%, and so on and so on. Where do we say the line must be drawn? Councillor Bruce, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say that when I did send my statement in for the last one, it was on those policies that I was suggesting that we review the other application. So I would be in support of using those policies in this case as well. I think this application actually fails to safeguard the residential amenity, and with the parking stress that there is already. And yes, an extra 2 cars needing to find parking in the current situation is putting it over the top. So I support those 2 policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, sorry. So safeguarding residential amenity is a different policy. So that's not D2 or D14. So D2 is standards of design, effectively. D14 is the highway policy trigger. D25 is residential amenity. So if members were citing those different reasons for refusal, effectively that's 3 different reasons for refusal for this scheme. Against those 3 different policies. So the question is, for every reason for refusal that is proposed, if the applicant goes to appeal, they have to defend every single reason for refusal. My advice to other committees is minimise and go for the strong reason for refusal that you're really committed to. If you are committed to all 3, then you are free to go for all 3. But my advice is to minimise and focus constraints and harms on the policies that matter. But it's policy D2, policy D25 and policy D14 if members want to have a look.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Smedley and Bruce, how do you want to play that?
You know, 2 things that's quite important is the my wonderful rapper syndrome, just a little bit more into what harm it does. It's constantly harming. The other key thing that Councillor Filmer said a minute ago was that members are meant to have these decisions, and that's quite important that we take this decision and make a stand on this. The officer, who's an expert on the subject, should be able to, forage through that and tell us which is the best option to make that happen. Without me saying it.
In other committees where we've got to the point where it's an overturning officer recommendation, what we can do is we can offer a 5-minute break for the chair, the lead officer and the members that voted and seconded the vote to have the discussion offline in terms of which policies we're looking at, what the degree of harm is, and then which one you feel reflects the weight and the feel of the committee. Because as you say, it's a committee decision. I'm just here to try and help guide you in terms of making the most defendable decision you can. So if you're happy with that, and if members are happy with that, if we could take a 5-minute break and discuss maybe the member kitchen policies and later policies.
Let's do that and reconvene at 3:30, please. I'll pass straight across to Mr. Vrees for an update.
Thank you very much. Right, so based on the concerns that were raised before the break, effectively what we've done is just had a quick look at policies. So policy D2 has a specific reference to development should be responsive to and reinforce local context, character, scale and distinctiveness of place. D14 also requires the appropriate provision of parking in accordance with the Somerset County Council parking standards. So the point was raised, technically in the parking standards there isn't reference to a HMO, so there isn't a requirement in the parking standards for HMO parking. But if members felt that there wasn't provision for appropriate parking because the scale of development going from 6 to 8 was excessive, then that could be a reason for refusal in accordance with policy D2 and D14 of the local plan. So the consideration for members is whether the scale of the development, aka the change from a 6-bed HMO to an 8-bed HMO, would result on such significant impact and the lack of parking in the vicinity to recommend refusal. This is similar to a case that members did make at committee not that long ago, which was approved, but each case is assessed on its own merits. So it's over to members in terms of whether they support that reason for refusal or not. The exact wording for the reason for refusal, so just to be clear, the resolution made today will be the resolution on the decision, but because of the change to the appeal process, what we will do is we will agree the exact wording of any reason for refusal, if that's the vote, with the chair and the members that have put forward the recommendation, and it'll be presented to members in the minutes next month. So technically, the decision would be authorised next month when everyone's seen the minutes in the event of an overturn, and that's because of a change to the appeal regulations. So over to members.
Thank you. We all happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. With that, having been sorted out, then we can go back to the vote. Yeah, you're okay with that?
Yes, sorry.
We can go back to the vote. So the proposal is from councillor Smedley, seconded by councillor Bruce, that we refuse this application in line with the conditions that we just spoke about. Can I ask you to raise a hand, please, if you are in favour of said proposal? That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4. And any against, please? 1 against, with no abstentions. Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, thank you so much for your patience as we battled through that, new processes and all that. We'll go straight on to the last item, which is Shrike Barn, Glastonbury. I must just say, this is in my patch, and I have been party to conversations on this application. I should have mentioned this earlier. Although I do come to the committee with an open mind, I'm not predetermined, and I'm open to discussion. So with that, are you taking this one on as well? Lovely, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is for planning application 3825000012 at Shrike Barn, Glastonbury, under Bridgewater. The proposal is for a change of use of an outbuilding of an annex to a holiday let, and this is retrospective. So these are the relevant local plan policies as set out in the committee report. So these are the main considerations. So principles of development, visual amenity, residential amenity, highways issues, flood risk, ecological issues. So relevant planning history for this site, there was a certificate of lawfulness granted for the siting of the building to be used as a residential annex. So the building for this application already has lawful use as a residential annex. So this is the aerial location plan of the site. This is the site location plan, which shows the access track into the site. So these are the elevations of the building. So it's an existing building. So these are, this is the building as it stands. These are the floor plans. So it's a 1-bedroom annex proposed to be used for 1 to 4 guests at any time. So these are the site photographs of the existing building. This is the access track into the site. And this is the access onto the main road, the A39. So we had an objection from the parish council. So the parish council objected on the basis that there was a restrictive covenant on the site, which restricted holiday use. However, covenant would fall outside the planning process and would be a separate legal matter to resolve. There was also comments that the proposal was too close to neighbours and likely to cause nuisance. However, the extant use is a residential use and it only has one bedroom. So due to the size of the site, it's unlikely that vehicle movements and noise disturbance associated with holiday use would be to an extent that we can reasonably refuse planning permission. These are the neighbour comments that we received. So in response to these comments, so there was concerns over the access track not being suitable to accommodate the use. However, the access track is already used for residential purposes and would be used to access the annex in any case. There was also concerns about the intensification of the site with the proposed commercial use. However, this is just a one-bedroom holiday let, so it's unlikely to intensify or increase the use of the site to an extent that additional traffic or noise nuisance would adversely harm neighbouring properties. It's also due to the size, it's unlikely that the proposed holiday let would be incompatible with nearby residential uses. The applicant has also submitted a management plan in support of the application, which advises that the site would only be used for up to 4 applicants at any one time. It also includes measures on how noise would be managed. And we would attach a condition to any planning permission, advising that the use of the site needs to be in accordance with that planning condition. So there was also concerns that the increased amount of water usage would have an impact on phosphate mitigation as the site falls within the phosphate catchment zone. However, the site already has a bathroom and kitchen in use under the residential use, so it's unlikely that the use as a holiday let would exacerbate or increase harm on the phosphate site. There was also concerns on the harm to rural character on biodiversity. However, as the site is already an existing annex, it already has use for residential use. It's unlikely that this would harm the rural character or have any further impact on biodiversity. There was also reference to a building survey advising that the site was unsuitable for residential use. However, the use already has lawful use for residential. This application proposes to be used as a holiday let. So in summary, the proposal, so the principal development is would fall under CO1, which requires there to be a tie to rural use. It's considered that the use for tourism would be acceptable under CO1. It's also considered that the proposal would be compliant with D17, the council tourism policy. So the principal development is considered exceptional in this location. In terms of visual amenity, the proposal is an existing building and there's minimal exterior alterations have been proposed. In terms of residential amenity, so I've already covered, the proposal is for a 1-bedroom holiday let. The existing use is already in C3, so it's unlikely any sort of vehicular movements or use of the site would increase noise disturbance to an extent it would unacceptably harm adjoining neighbours. In terms of the highways issue, the access track, so standing advice would apply. The access track is already used as residential and the proposal would have adequate parking. In terms of flood risk, the proposal is considered acceptable and the flood risk assessment would be conditioned. And in terms of ecology, as the proposal is retrospective and an existing use, it's unlikely to cause any further harm to protected species. The recommendation would be therefore to approve planning permission subject to 6 conditions. This is in accordance with the approved plans, a register of the guests that would be on site. The management plan, we would propose to remove permitted development rights No external lighting to be attached to the building, and the development shall be in accordance with the flood risk assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 3 speakers registered for this application. So if I could call please Emily Brown to the front, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Emily Brown. I live immediately adjacent to the site. I'd like to first focus on 3 key areas where the officer's report does not reflect reality on the ground. First, the issue of distance and the impacts. The report repeatedly refers to the annex being 20 metres away from the neighbouring properties. This is misleading. A large decking and jacuzzi, which is the primary source of the noise and activity, is located approximately 2 metres away from our private garden boundary. As a result, we're experiencing noise late night into the evening, loss of privacy, and we've effectively lost the use of our garden. I'd like to point out at this point as well that the plans also show the boundaries are incorrect. Secondly, the reliance on management plan is not sufficient. The report suggests quiet hours and management plan will mitigate noise. In reality, these are not enforceable in any meaningful way. This is a short-term holiday let with frequent guest turnover, not a single household. Frequently with up to 6 additional vehicles arriving regularly and 5 or more guests. We've already experienced late night arrivals, outdoor late night use. This is not a theoretical concern, it is an established pattern of use, policy conflicts defaulting. Third, this represents a clear intensification of use. The report concludes there's no significant impacts on highways or activity. However, holiday use is fundamentally different from ancillary residence. It results in frequent noise, vehicle movements, guests unfamiliar with the area, and increased pressure on a single track with no passing spaces. This is not comparable to a normal dwelling. It's also being operated all year round, with significant activity at this site. The single track access road for residential is used for residential and farm vehicles, both Shride Farm and Bennett's Farm. They suffered from increased traffic flow, and vehicles that are forced to queue or reverse back onto the A361 to allow cars to pass, which is a major safety concern. When cars do reach to the end of the track, they cross our private land to access Shride Barn and its driveway. We suffer from noise, trespassing, loss of privacy. Cars are leaving all hours day and night, on many occasions driving directly to our house, putting our 4-year-old child in danger. We have to be on alert 24 hours a day. It said in the officer report that the annex is shielded by trees and hedgerows. The 1.5-storey annex towers above the trees, and the bedroom window overlooks directly into our garden. Fences and gates have already been erected by us with a significant cost to stop traffic and trespass to protect our child. Unfortunately, this has been unsuccessful and the problem continues. In the conclusion, the officer's recommendation relies on incorrect assumptions about distances, over relying on management controls, and underestimates the true level of use. For this reason, I respectfully ask the committee to refuse the application.
Thank you.
Very fast.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed. Right, if I could call Mr. Stephen Phillip, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. While the report focuses on the current proposal, it does not clearly explain how the building now differs from what was originally approved, and that difference is important in understanding the impact. There's been no clear comparison provided between the approved 2008 plans and what is now being applied for. The retrospective application understates the extent of the development. The physical alterations, including increased footprint, additional accommodation, and reorientation of the building's entrances, exits, and windows. They represent a material operational development, which I feel has not been properly assessed. What exists on site today is materially different to what was originally approved with its specific conditions. This application is not just about use, it's asking the committee to approve different, larger, reconfigured building that has already been constructed and is now causing harm. This use has been causing harm since August 2024, when it began operating as an unauthorised holiday let, until November 2025, when a major fire stopped the operation. Major building works have now been carried out since the fire. The original approval was for a single-storey home office laboratory workshop. The building now as it stands and differs from that approval. There are entrances and exits repositioned to face towards my property on the east and south elevations rather than away on the north elevation, which increases its noise and disturbance. A lean-to extension enlarging the footprint, bringing the structure closer to my property. The unauthorised building now falls outside the residential curtilage onto land that would have been classed as agricultural land. A relocated internal staircase, not spiral, leading to a first floor bedroom. The first floor bedroom above the kitchen area now overlooks the garden, way above the trees and hedges. And there's a fully fitted kitchen, bathroom and sauna. A large decking area with a jacuzzi just 2 metres from our property. This has been misrepresented on the map submitted by the applicant's agent, claiming part of my land as land belonging to Stride Barn. There's also glass panes added to the south elevation facing my property. All of these changes and breaches increase the impact beyond what was originally approved, particularly with a high turnover of short-term guests and an intensification of use. As previously stated, part of this building is outside the approved boundary and has already been described by an officer as unauthorised. So this is not simply a change of use, it's an attempt to regulise an unlawful structure. The retrospective plans are not the approved plans, they're new plans for a different building, and that change has not been properly assessed. This is not hypothetical, we're already experiencing this impact due to the retrospective nature of the development. And just to add, the single track serves both Stride Farm and Bennett's Farm, and that's why there's an intensification of use on the track, which is a problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, if I could call Ms. Lena Kim Mueller, please. Whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Dear Chair, Vice Chair and members of the committee, my name is Lena and together with my partner I own and live at Stride Barn. The building referred to in the application is an existing annex within our residential property. It is already a lawful structure and is currently used as accommodation associated with our home. This application simply seeks permission for a flexible use, allowing the annex to occasionally be used as small-scale guest accommodation when it is not being used by us, by our friends and family. Importantly, this is a very small and carefully managed use. Occupancy is strictly limited to 2 to 4 guests, and we do not allow parties. A comprehensive management plan has been prepared and submitted with our application. If permission is granted, this would be secured through planning conditions. The plan includes quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., guest screening prior to booking, and clear house rules that all visitors must agree to. We live permanently at Stride Barn and are present on site during all guest stays. This means the accommodation is actively supervised and managed at all times. The annex is located approximately 20 meters from the nearest neighboring dwelling and benefits from substantial natural screening from hedges and trees, which helps maintain privacy and protect neighboring amenity. No physical alterations to the building are proposed. The application simply relates to how the existing annex may occasionally be used. Overall, this represents a very modest and low-impact use of an existing residential building, consistent with planning policies that support appropriate rural tourism within existing properties. We care deeply about our home and the surrounding area, and we are fully committed to operating the accommodation responsibly and quietly. I would like to draw your attention to a similar use at the neighboring property at Stride Farm, who are opposing this application, operating a tourist and glamping business. In this context, it cannot reasonably be argued that the proposed use would result in any significant adverse impact, nor does it introduce anything materially different from what is already a lawful use of the annex. We therefore respectfully urge the committee to accept the officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. If we have no other speakers, if I might bring it open to the floor, please. Do we have any questions? Councillor Filmer.
But really just going to ask the officer if they can give us a little bit of an explanation, because we've had two descriptions, what sound like completely different buildings. Whether it is a conversion of something that already has permission, whether it is a change of use of the existing building, or whether there is stuff there that is unauthorised. I mean, it's very difficult for us as members to come to a conclusion when we heard two completely different views. So what is the officer's view?
Okay, so the original planning permission under 3807-00011 was the erection of a single-storey building to use as a home office, laboratory and workshop. And then under 3823-00014, it gained certificate of lawfulness to be used as a residential. So it was concluded that it had 10 years continuous use as residential use. So the lawful use of the building is C3 residential ancillary to the main dwelling at Shride Barn. Then I believe it started operating as a holiday let, and this came through planning enforcement as requiring planning permission to change the use of a C3 residential ancillary annex to a holiday let.
Okay, laboratory.
That's right. All I was going to ask was in terms of then we heard that there were windows, doors, and an aspect of the building that are facing different directions. So that is what's been given permission under the certificate of lawfulness.
Oh, apologies. Yes, sorry, that was granted under the certificate of lawfulness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the final thing I wanted to ask about was just in terms of the distances with neighbours. We've heard that the building itself is 20 metres away, but obviously what sounds like the potential source of nuisance is very much more close than that. Where are we in terms of the items of, I think it was a jacuzzi was mentioned, which obviously is, I know from Airbnbs around my patch that those often are sources of enjoyment for the residents who are in the jacuzzi, but not necessarily for the residents who live in properties around them. But is that something that is taken into account with the recommendation that we've done in terms of you say it doesn't have an impact on neighbouring amenity? Just would like to have an understanding of that.
Apologies, I'm just going to refine location plan. So in terms of the decking and the jacuzzi, so that is taken into account. But these are residential, so the lawful use is residential, so the applicant can have a jacuzzi and a decking there anyway without the need for planning permission. So we would take that into account, and there is a management plan which we would recommend we attach a condition which is enforceable.
Yeah, I was just going to provide a little bit more clarification. So Eleanor will be looking for a site location plan to show where the location of the site is. Effectively, the host dwelling where the current owner of the site lives is in the right-hand corner of the site. Then along from it is the outbuilding. The outbuilding is originally consented in 2007. I think it was of a smaller footprint, was in a slightly different location, wasn't the size of what's on the site now. What is on site now was granted approval through the lawful development certificate in terms of they demonstrated they'd built it. It was up, it was occupied, it demonstrated it had been there for a length of time, which then makes it lawful through planning purposes. So in terms of size, scale, design, layout, all of that has actually been granted through the lawful development certificate. The building, as I'm looking at it on the plan I've got in front of me, Shride Farm, who I'm assuming the objectors sort of occupy that development. That development is just south of the boundary that forms the rear boundary of the application site and the annex.
But that boundary is incorrect.
If the boundary is incorrect and if they've served the wrong certificate as part of the planning application, it runs the risk of invalidating any consent that they've got, which is a legal issue that would have to be taken up outside of planning. So for planning, if we get notified that the wrong ownership certificate's been served or the wrong blue outline is served, we ask the question to the applicant in terms of, is this right, is this wrong? If they tell us it's right, we run with it. It's a legal issue that sits outside of the planning process. So if that question's been asked and it's been answered and the applicant is aware of that risk, it is a legal risk for them outside of the planning application. I think we're just trying to share the slide with you through the PowerPoint presentation, but effectively the building that's subject to this application just sits slightly north of where the boundary is with Shide Farm. The nearest buildings look like Anthuriat buildings, but I've not been on site, so I will pass back to Eleanor, hopefully once she's managed to share it. Forgive you, just try and share the screen because at least they can see it. Bear with us for a minute. Yeah, so this slide basically shows the application site. So you've got the red outline showing the access drive into the site, an area for parking, and then there's sort of an L-shaped footprint. The L-shaped footprint is the building. I think if I'm going on site photos properly, the existing jacuzzi, I think, is just slightly south of the building in the L-shaped tucked in bit, because that puts it quite close to the boundary with the farm.
Yeah, blue down.
The blue boundary is.
I'm sorry, I think nobody said that.
Can we keep it within the committee, please?
The application site and the constraint of the application site that the members are looking at is the red line. So the red line is specifically for the building and the red line is specifically for the access and the parking area. The red line does not extend or include the decking or the jacuzzi as part of this application. So if that's an element that requires planning permission, that would have to be something we'd come back to the applicants with after this meeting. But effectively the application is for the building, because the red outline is tied to the building, to the access into the parking area as shown.
I'm sorry, we can't take further questions from the gallery. And please, the conversation needs to happen on this side of the room, if we could, please. Thank you for that. I'm interested that the previous permission was granted for a single-storey dwelling, but this is clearly a two-storey dwelling.
I'll go for 1.5, but it's the lawful development certificate that was approved in 2023. So the size and scale of the building isn't something that members have any control over for this application.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. William? Councillor Ferguson.
A dumb question, it's my theme of the day. If there is contention about the integrity of the documents and where various boundaries lie, I can't really say it's kind of, is there much point in us making a decision? What's the best way to approach making a decision now if there is so much history and legal contention to this application already?
I think that the contention is about where the site boundary is. The site boundary doesn't form the red outline that members are making the decision on. So the members should be focusing on the red outline of the site, which is the site access into the site, the parking area and the building itself.
Okay, thank you.
But if the site boundary isn't, but if we're only concerned with the boundary of the structure itself, that's a bit limiting, isn't it? I'm not sure I can. Councillor Filmer.
Well, then you can ask on further questions later on, assessment, but that's not part of the red line. We heard that that's obviously a normal dwelling, you don't need planning permission for a jacuzzi to get in part of the domestic thing. If that under this new use, that's going to be a holiday use. Would they need planning permission for the decking and the jacuzzi to be used as holiday use? Because otherwise it was installed as just a domestic thing.
So it depends on the site. So if it's within the residential councillage, then it's ancillary to the residential use. And therefore doesn't require planning permission.
But that's ancillary, the ancillary use for the residents of the dwelling. So the applicants themselves could use jacuzzi, but they couldn't have holidaymakers going in there because they were using it as a holidaymaking tourism use.
I'm sorry, I'm going to complicate you with plumbing things. Jacuzzi isn't a building. So it's not permanent development. It's not something, it's a movable structure that could be considered to be a chattel. So in terms of planning control, planning do have control over decking. So if decking is more than 30 centimetres above ground level, then it would need planning permission. What I don't know from this meeting is whether the decking is more than 30 centimetres above ground level, and therefore whether it would or wouldn't need planning permission. It's outside the red outline for this application.
Okay.
So on this application, it does not include consideration of the decking or the jacuzzi area, and it will be for the site owner and enforcement and officers to look at that outside of this meeting in terms of whether it is development that requires permission, and if so, then what the impact of that development is. So if we remove from members' minds the decking and the jacuzzi, the use of the building is what is being applied for in terms of it's currently authorised as annex accommodation to the main dwelling. What they're seeking is a flexible use, so to keep it as annex, but to also enable it to be used as Airbnb. So the question for members is what is the impact of the differing uses? What is the degree of harm of the differing uses, and what does that mean for neighbours? So that's the consideration that members have to take into account for this, but please remove the jacuzzi and the decking from your mind. It's outside of the red outline, so it's not part of this decision. And we will follow that up with the applicant after this meeting to see if it does actually need planning permission.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. As far as a jacuzzi is concerned, you may as well have a children's toilet for there. Makes not a jot of difference at all, because as you just pointed out yourself, it's not a structure that's going to stay there in foundations, something they're talking about. Without getting ahead of myself here, with the information we just talked about just now with the whole discussion, and what I have on my screen, which I'm looking at right here just now, I actually don't have a problem with this at all. Nothing's perfect. I understand that. You can always pick fault in anything if you want to pick fault, but I'm not going to. And on that basis, I'm happy to propose for permission. Thank you.
Here we have a proposal from Councillor Henry that we accept or grant permission on this application. So at the moment, we don't have a seconder, but I am pushing for further discussion on this. Or at least a seconder. Councillor Filmer.
I will go with the second thing on the basis of what we're talking about here is the red line around the building itself, because I don't think we've got grounds to say no to that. The only thing I would like is just some reassurance from the officers again. We have a management plan, which sounds very good. How enforceable is that management plan?
So if the applicants don't follow the management plan, then it'd be a breach of condition, and that can be logged through planning enforcement and investigated. But it can be.
Right. So we do have a seconder for that proposal. And without any further questions from the floor, I will take it to a vote, please. The proposal is from Councillor Henry that we grant permission on this application, seconded by Councillor Filmer. Would all those in favour please raise a hand? Okay, that's 9-4, and any against? No. Any abstentions? 1. Okay. That's fine. So that is passed. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so that concludes our main business for the day. We can go on to appeal reports, if we could, please, after Mr. Bruce.
Thank you. So there have been 2 new appeals received, both of which were written reps, both of which were delegated decisions. So they're being dealt with under the written representations process. So one of them is the change of use of existing hard standing area for airport parking, and provision of EV charging points at Banterworth Arena, Beechtree Farm, refused under delegated officer decision, going through the written reps process. The second one is change of use of a C3 dwelling to a C2 children's home. Again, it's a written reps. That's a Homefield Little Island Road in Wedmore. So there will be decisions coming up at some point soon. And then the planning decision we've had was again another delegated decision. It was change of use of land and formation of 2 traveller and gypsy caravan pitches and 2 day rooms. It was a part retrospective, so the development had commenced. Again, it was a written reps appeal. The decision's attached to the decision notice, but effectively it's reinforced the importance of flood risk within the north area of Somerset. I think we were slightly more relaxed on flood risk, given a few appeal decisions where, given the insufficient provision of pitches, the inspectors previously gave some decisions to sort of say, if you haven't got provision, you can have temporary sites here for a limited period of time. Given the number of pitches that have recently been granted planning permission, so I think that's set out on one of the back pages. Basically sets out that the FRA was insufficient and that 39 pitches have been granted planning permission recently. So based on the 2013 GTAA, there's only an under provision of about 6 further pitches. Having said that, the second that we've had this decision, we've got now an up-to-date GTAA for the next sort of 30 years going forward. So as you can guess, we still haven't got a 5-year land supply. But the decision does say basically the flood risk element outweighs the benefits of the provision, given that the under provision against the 5-year land supply was relatively minimal, but the right to appropriate and safe right is sort of more strong than the reason for refusal or reasons for approval. So it was dismissed on flooding, effectively.
Yeah. To say that other application number 4124 00015, where the applicant was Mr. J. Dolan, there is no connection or not a relative of mine. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you very much. Well understood. Okay, that concludes our business for the day. We will be, thank you if you are watching us online. We will be closing down the connection now, but I would ask the committee to stay behind for a moment, please, because we're going to be speaking with Lee. Thank you all very much indeed.